everybody, and welcome to the Football Outsiders live stream and podcast for Thursday, March 23rd, 2023. I am Aaron Schatz, editor in chief of footballoutsiders.com. Mike Tanier is off on vacation this week, so I am joined by Vince Verhei to run through the second stage of free agency. Last week, we talked about the first few days. And, most of what's happened in those first few days. It's slowed down. I think every year I say this. Wow, it really slows down after the first 3 or 4 days. But every year it does. It really slows down. But there have been some big moves in the last week. And then we'll talk about the best remaining free agents who are out there and where we think that they should go. So, don't forget, of course, we want your comments. If you are watching us live, if you're listening after the fact, we're on live on Thursdays at 1 p.m. Eastern, and you can make live comments on Twitch and YouTube live, and we would love to hear from you. But let's talk about the biggest moves that have happened since we did the last live stream last Thursday. And I think that starts off with two trades, starting with Brandin Cooks going to the Dallas Cowboys.
I was putting together the free agent grade, the offseason grades piece for the website last night, and the NFC was paper thin last year anyway. There were really three good teams in Dallas, Philadelphia, and San Francisco. And Philadelphia has had a pretty big talent drain, which is kind of unavoidable. And none of the other second-tier teams like Seattle or Detroit or the Giants of Minnesota made huge advancements. So Dallas, with this pickup, it looks like they're like neck and neck with San Francisco for the top seed in the NFC here. It's kind of a small deal in a vacuum, but in the circumstances, this is a pretty big trade, and it's a great pickup for Dallas. It makes them that much closer to getting back to the Super Bowl where they have not been in a long time.
Yeah, I'm surprised by how mediocre Brandin Cooks is in some of the advanced stats, even the ones that try to separate you from your quarterback. Obviously, his DVOA and DYAR are not good, in part because the quarterbacks throwing to him are not good. But in ESPN's wide receiver rankings, the ones that are based on player tracking data, he only came in 73rd last year. But Michael Gallup, the guy he's going to replace in the starting lineup and knock to the number 3 receiver, came in 80th. So even by that metric, this is an upgrade for Dallas. So yeah, I probably would have preferred Odell Beckham, but clearly they're seeing, look, the teams have all had a chance to sign Odell Beckham and nobody has.
Right.
So they're seeing something we're not seeing as far as like his injury. He did a workout, and whether it's how much money he wants compare or what shape he's in, the teams are all waiting on him. So we'll get to him a little later, but Cooks is a good addition.
Cook is a good addition, and I wonder how much of that tracking data, that kind of thing. He was clearly the number one receiver in Houston, and he won't be in Dallas, and that will probably help him, I would think, get up a little better. So I think it's a
Right.
good.
Certainly when it comes to opposing cornerbacks, if there's a team where the opposing number one cornerback covers the number one receiver, he will not be covering Brandin Cooks. He will
No,
be covering CeeDee Lamb.
right, and that helps. That's going to help Brandon Cooks. That's going to help the Dallas Cowboys and Houston. I'm still not entirely sure what they're doing, but in theory, they're rebuilding, and they'd be better off having a draft pick than having Brandon Cooks moping around the facility anyway. So this seems like a win all around.
They're also, but I think when it comes to stats, there is reason to believe that Brandin Cooks was mentally checked out last year.
Yeah.
In a way that he will not be in 2023 for the Dallas Cowboys.
No, he's wanted out for a long time, and it's best for everyone involved. They found a way to get him out of that building.
Elijah Moore is the other interesting trade of the last few days. That one came down, yesterday? Elijah Moore and a third-round pick going from the Jets to Cleveland for a second-round pick. And I think that is a good trade for the Browns to add a guy who is a second-round talent for the drop in draft pick ends up being sort of equivalent to like a 5th round pick or something.
Mm-hmm. No,
And Elijah Moore was actually 40th in those advanced ESPN receiver rankings last year. Like his DYAR and DVOA are not that good, but you look at his numbers, they're much better when someone other than Zach Wilson is throwing him the ball. And so he provides it's an interesting because Cleveland does not have a receiver like that. They don't have a little slot guy.
Mm-hmm.
Like they needed a little slot guy, and now they've got one.
Yeah, and I think the biggest reason this trade is a win for Cleveland is they were able to get that other pick back. So their number of picks hasn't changed. They're just picking in a worse position, and now they have a slot receiver they didn't have before. I know a lot of people and a lot of Jets film guys have talked about how he's going to waste in that offense and going to waste with that quarterback. And it's not like New York has not been stocking up on receivers lately.
I mean, Corey Davis might get cut at a certain point if they want to make Alan Lazard a starter, and Nicole Hardman is now there.
Yeah, so they've got this move's probably in the works for a while. Once those bodies were added, they felt safe doing it, and Cleveland's a good spot for them. They had an obvious need, and they made the compensation work. And like I say, for Cleveland, it's for a song for relative pennies. They got this guy, so it fits. Cleveland, is in a weird spot because they're clearly maybe still the 4th best team in the division, depending on what the heck is going on in Baltimore right now.
Right.
But they made their investment in the quarterback, and
so much depends on who that guy is. And last year he was really bad for 6 games, but based on his history, we should not expect him to be that bad. And all indications, I think Matthew Berry wrote something about talking to people at the combine that Cleveland is going to throw more this year, that their offense is going to develop and become more modern, and there's going to be a little less Nick Chubb and more throwing, and having a guy like Elijah Moore is a really good addition for them.
Yeah, and we have seen Deshaun Watson play better football than he played last year, and don't want to make excuses for that guy in particular, but he'll have a full off season ready to participate as a starting quarterback, and that should lead to a better performance on the field. But that said, he's still in there with a 2-time defending division champions in Cincinnati, former AFC champions, almost got back to the Super Bowl again last year. Baltimore still looks strong.
A Baltimore team that is really good if Lamar Jackson goes back.
Yeah. And a Pittsburgh team that is not as good as those two, but it's the Steelers. They never bottom out really. So it's a tough road to hoe. But again, Cleveland has a better roster now than they did 48 hours ago, and for a very low price. So good for them. And for the Jets again, we know who we think their quarterback is going to be. It's really weird that these MVP guys are hanging over all of our heads.
Yeah, we'll talk about Lamar Jackson when we get to best available free agents, but there is a lot of waiting here for things to happen. And by the way, you can tell from both what the Ravens and the Packers are doing in free agency that they're stuck waiting too. They haven't done anything.
Yeah, and but I don't really know what's going to happen with Lamar Jackson. I'm confident that in the end, somehow Aaron Rodgers will be in New York with the Jets. So the Jets can proceed as if he is there right now, and adding all of Aaron Rodgers' favorite receivers, and shipping up a guy that wasn't happy, even though the compensation wasn't great. They've kind of already replaced him. A fine deal for them. Good deal for Cleveland.
I think that the most important free agent that's been signed since our last show is C.J. Gardner-Johnson to the Lions. He didn't make as much money. I don't have the contract details in front of me. He didn't get as much money as I think people expected him to get. It's only a 1-year deal. But he should be, it's another piece. They added Cameron Sutton and Emmanuel Mosley, and then C.J. Gardner-Johnson on that, just doing a lot of work on their secondary.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Gardner-Johnson actually had poor coverage stats from Sports Info Solutions last year. He allowed 8.8 yards per pass with a 41% success rate when he was in coverage, which is worse than what he did the year before in New Orleans. But I think we all generally believe that C.J. Gardner-Johnson is a useful player, certainly, and he provides the Lions with a lot of flexibility because he can do nickel and he can do safety.
Yeah, that's all important too. And safety cover stats are kind of weird sometimes. If he's only thrown at when when the opponents are throwing deep, that's going to affect his cover stats a
Well,
lot.
CJ play, he does more. He does slot corner coverage stuff and covers tight ends a lot.
Yeah, but like you say, the Lions have made major investments in their secondary, and that makes sense because their defense, I believe, was I know it was bad last year. I'm looking at exactly how bad their
It
defense
was
was.
pretty bad.
Yeah, and um, they were still almost a playoff team. 23rd in pass defense, which is better than I thought. The 23rd in pass defense DVOA, but like I say, the talent pool in the NFC as a whole is pretty shallow. Detroit's one of those teams, almost a playoff team last year. And of those teams that almost made the playoffs, are the one that maybe improved the most. So this is a chance for Detroit to be more successful than the Lions have been in a long time. And they're moving forward. And it really feels like this organization now has a plan in place, and they know what they're doing. And things look bright for Detroit with Green Bay going through the mess they're going through. Chicago has, we'll get to Chicago, but the
Yeah, I mean,
future is bright.
Chicago is they've added a lot of talent, and they have the most effective cap room of
Yeah,
any team
yeah.
still.
But we're waiting to see what happens with Justin Fields and how he develops, and I believe he will develop. I don't know he will develop.
Right.
So that's kind of the question mark affecting that team, and they have a ton of draft picks coming in too, so they're going to get better. Minnesota wisely realized they were not as good last year as the record indicated. Did not try to think they were one player away and make a big splashy move. They've stepped back and cut salary and try to get younger. And all of this for Detroit opens an opportunity to get back.
They're the favorites. They're the favorites in that division at this
Yeah,
point.
yeah. And so this is all wise moves. They're doing what they're supposed to do, which is striking when the iron is hot, and full credit to them for that.
Um, Dalton Schultz to Houston and Mike Gesicki to the Patriots.
I mean, Houston, they're going to have probably Bryce Young. I think most of us think that by now. And the more targets they can get for him, the better. The more linemen they can get for him, the better. They just, what they've been doing for a while now is signing veterans to short-term deals. So they get some talent. The talent plays okay. The talent leaves, needs to be replaced. They just
Yep.
go into this. It's a revolving door. They have it basically the entire team. So it's kind of hard to evaluate their acquisitions in that aspect because you don't know how is Dalton Schultz going to help Bryce Young develop, or is it going to be gone in 12 months? Things kind of go that way, but they're going to have a quarterback. The quarterback is going to need some weapons. Dalton Schultz is one of the better weapons available. So it's a good signing, but you have to question basically everything Houston does until proven otherwise.
Yeah. And Gesicki, listen, there are people who feel he's very special scouting wise, but the performance has never really been there. He was 28th out of 29 tight ends in those ESPN advanced rankings last year.
Mm,
Like, yeah, he's got a great catch radius. He's basically just a big slot receiver. He very rarely plays a conventional inline tight end position. I feel like he's more of a replacement for Jacoby Myers than Jonnu Smith.
interesting. Interesting.
Um,
Yeah.
I'm
And
less excited about. I mean, as a Patriots fan, I'm not like, oh wow, Mike Gesicki party time. Like, it's not really that
no,
exciting to me.
no, the Dolphins offense got a lot better when they stopped featuring him, and that's they also got a lot better when they added Tyreek Hill, and
Yeah.
while they had a healthy Tua Tagovailoa, that that's the biggest reason. But it's also a sign that listen, he's not the kind of guy who's going to carry. He's not going to carry your offense. He's not Gronk to put it in New England perspective. He's probably close to an average starting tight end, more of a receiver than a blocker, and that's fine and dandy. But no, I don't think he moves the needle much for the Patriots.
Um, Being in Seattle, what are your feeling about the Seahawks signing Julian Love and Devin Bush?
Devin Bush really fits in with kind of the Pete Carroll modus operandi. He loves to take guys who were highly drafted elsewhere but didn't work out for whatever reason and give them another chance. Geno Smith, obviously, is the current most prominent example of that, but Marshawn Lynch started in Buffalo. And you look at some of the other guys they drafted, or excuse me, the other guys they've acquired, Jadaveon Clowney from Houston, even going back to Mike Williams in his first year or two, the wide receiver from Detroit, Sheldon Richardson after his time with the Jets was done. And it doesn't always work out, obviously, but sometimes it does. And it's kind of a classic Pete Carroll setting that way. And I know, if he had been a success in Pittsburgh, Devin Bush would not have been available on the market in the first place. But Carroll before has taken guys who either didn't work out in the first home or their time looked up and gotten stuff out of them. So that's a good buy low signing. And then Julian Love is an interesting guy because he's another one who can play safety and nickel and go back and forth, which is what Pete Carroll loves to do. They, for a few years there, didn't really have a nickel back. They just took Ugo Amadi, who was started as a safety, and they said, "You're playing nickel now." And
Yeah.
it worked more or less for a while. And this is something, Julian Love can do both. My gut says he's going to end up being the primary nickel, but the Seahawks have used a lot of free safety looks in the past with Quandre Diggs and Jamal Adams and Ryan Neal. And then, of course, Jamal Adams often being injured. That has affected those plans. But I think their top defense, if all goes according to plan, will be Quandre Diggs in the free safety, Jamal Adams in the box, and Julian Love as the sort of safety / nickel hybrid. I think that's their plan. So it all makes sense. They're having a great offseason actually. They got.
Yeah, we gave them, I think, the highest. Did we give them the highest grade in the
We
free
did.
agency grades?
We
The
did.
free agency grades article is on footballoutsiders.com today.
Yep. They're the only team with an A overall grade. The Geno Smith contract is ridiculously team friendly. His cap hit this year is like $10 million, less than $11 million. It's Geno Smith has a lower cap hit to start for Seattle than Mitchell Trubisky has to back up in Pittsburgh. It's barely any higher than Zach Wilson's cap hit to probably be a backup with the Jets. So the first year of this thing is just ridiculously low
Team
cost, and
friendly. Yeah.
it will escalate from there, especially if he plays well. But if he plays well, great, that's a good problem. So they're having a very good offseason. They were in the playoffs last year. I don't know if how much they've closed the gap between themselves and San Francisco because San Francisco is so good, but they're definitely better now than they were last year, and they were a playoff team last year.
I have one more big move since last Thursday, and that's Isaac Seumalo signing with the Steelers. Now, this one surprised me because I did not see guard as a real big need for the Steelers. Kevin Dotson came out very good last year in the Sports Info Solutions total points stat. He ended up as 40 total points. Seumalo had 44. So that's an upgrade, but it's not really like Dotson was actually in the top part of the league for guards. So it's interesting. I don't know how big an upgrade this really is, even though it is a little bit of an upgrade.
And they also added Nate Herbig from the Jets. So Steelers going big at guard. I don't know. The Steelers are like I say, they never bottom out. They're never a horrible team, but we're all kind of sitting around waiting to see if Kenny Pickett can be worthy of a first round pick if he can play up to where he was drafted. And I guess they're just hoping that they can get him protection, the best protection they can get him. Then that'll happen. It is a weird one, especially for a team that throws short so often. You don't need stellar pass protection if you're throwing in 2.5 seconds every play. But I don't know. I don't have a problem with it. It's weird, and there's other teams. Seattle loves this offensive lineman so much. They were a team you thought might have been in there. They went at center instead. They focused on their defense and added the center from Detroit. But I don't know. I guess I just don't have that much to say about it. They signed a guard. It's a little weird. It may not be much of an upgrade, and the Steelers are just kind of going to remain, quasi-relevant for going into December because they always do.
Reminding everybody, if you are watching live right now, we love to hear your comments and questions on YouTube and Twitch. Let's talk about the best available free agents remaining. Number one, Lamar Jackson. Like, it seems clear at this point that the Ravens won, that
Yeah,
nobody is going to put in a bid for this guy. Now, I think that's crazy. I think the Falcons should be considering it. I think the Colts should be considering it. Maybe even the Lions should
not
be
bad.
considering it.
The Commanders,
Nobody is considering it.
nobody. And um, there's. I'm not privy to the private conversations of NFL owners. I don't know if they're well, I'll just say I don't know if they're colluding to make sure no one gets a guaranteed contract like Deshaun Watson got last year. If they're all that upset with the Browns for setting that precedent and going to work together to
I mean,
reverse
they
it.
don't need to collude
Yeah,
when they all think it. Like, if everybody thinks it, you don't need to work it out with each other. It's just that's what everybody thinks. So,
I guess. It is really really strange to me. He's a former MVP quarterback. He changes your offense. He has gifts no other starter has right now.
fits what the Falcons want to do so well.
The Falcons are the perfect team right here, and the we'll get to the Falcons. I guess this is a good time. What are the Falcons doing? Just sitting around. The NFC West is sitting there waiting to be taken. The Bucks have fallen apart. The Panthers have been reset. The Saints just keep muddling about. A good team can win this thing right now, and they're just
Falcons are third in effective cap room remaining.
yeah, and they've been playing under the weight of the Julio Jones and Matt Ryan contracts for so many years. They're finally free and clear. They can go out and shop, and the quarterback they have is not just on a rookie contract, but a third round rookie contract. And they should have money to spend. They do have money to spend. They just don't want to spend it. I don't get it. They'd be the number one team that should be interested in Lamar Jackson. But there's dozens of teams that should at least kick the tires on it.
And there's no indication anybody is.
Yeah, it's quite bizarre. But you are right, and the Ravens have definitely won this game of hardball. They called Jackson's bluff, and so far things are going their way. And if someone was going to make a bid, if someone's going to make an offer, it would have happened by now. You have to think. Unless Aaron Rodgers just pulls the rug completely out of the Jets and retires, and then they are desperate, and then they're forced to sign a former MVP still in his mid-20s. Oh no!
Oh, God forbid.
Yeah.
I have as the number 2 best available free agent on my list, Odell Beckham Jr.
And this is a weird one too, because there was, when he originally got hurt in the Super Bowl against Cincinnati, most people figured he'd be back by the middle of the regular season, and that didn't happen. And we're 6 months on from that point, and he's still just sitting there. And
he obviously wants to play for a contender, so you can look at teams that need wide receivers like the Titans, and I can't imagine him going there.
I was going to say that's not.
There's a lot of talk about the Bills. There's a lot of talk now about the Jets, that Aaron Rodgers wants Odell Beckham to come to the Jets with him.
Sure.
But then, how many wide receivers do the Jets need? Why would you sign Allen Lazard and McCole Hardman if you're also going to sign Odell Beckham?
Yeah, I don't know. It's 2023. The Odell Beckham of yore is probably gone, but he's still a good player. And in that Super Bowl after he got hurt, that Rams offense went in the deep freeze until the last drive. So he's still an effective player. He'll make 30 teams better.
Here's my dark horse: the Chiefs.
Yeah,
they lost Smith-Schuster.
Yep.
They lost Hardman. He would instantly be playing for a Super Bowl contender. He'd be a nice upgrade for them at the wide receiver position. Like, that's my dark horse candidate. Like, go win a ring with Patrick Mahomes.
That makes total sense. In Denver, Jerry Jeudy was not traded, but there was word that he was on the block for a while. If they're not happy with their receivers, that would make sense too. Like it makes sense for 30 some for about 30 teams to go get him. He's still a good player.
Yeah.
Even he's not the dominant wide receiver one he used to be. But when in a league where you need three good wide receivers in the field most of the time, he's one of those guys. So you plug in your team, he'd be a good fit. But Kansas City makes great sense. They're obviously a contender for as long as Patrick Mahomes is throwing passes, and they have lost a lot of wide receiver talent. They have an obvious need. Um, and if I have to think if he just wanted the most money he could get, he'd have signed somewhere by now. He's being very picky and choosy based on who's a contender, and the Chiefs are a perennial contender. So that makes a lot of sense.
Bobby Wagner. I wrote yesterday on Twitter, I don't know where he fits in at this point. And people responded. I got a lot of responses that said Bills or Seahawks. Well, with the Seahawks, why would you go out and sign Devin Bush if you were also going to sign Bobby Wagner? Like
Seahawks,
Wagner is better than Bush, but then all the money you gave Bush is wasted.
yeah, it's in the past they played a lot of base with three linebackers in the field, but that was when they were in a 4-3 base.
They're a 3-4 team now. They don't need
Theoretically,
three inside linebackers.
theoretically, they're a 3-4 team now. You had to get into some weird hybrid fronts if you had all three of them. Um, I think a lot of it is kind of just wishful thinking and the reunion storytelling. Yeah, he's
And the Bills, the thing is that I think of Wagner as being more of Matt Milano than being Tremaine Edmonds. So there's this feeling of they need to replace Tremaine Edmonds, but is Wagner the right player to replace Tremaine Edmonds? He's more of a pass,
yeah.
that's more like Milano. He's a middle linebacker, not a weak side linebacker.
Yes, yeah. Um, yeah, that's a good point too. And he may have just kind of, I don't want to say, well, actually I can say that he played himself out of the market because he was released. He was not a free agent. So he had a
Yeah,
head
he could
start.
have signed before free agency started anywhere. No compensation, compensation draft pick.
Yeah. He had a head start and could have found a home right away and maybe overweighted and may have to
So I have teams that could use middle linebacker help: the Giants,
yeah,
the
that's
Vikings, and the Falcons.
and of those, the Giants and the Vikings were in
The
the playoffs
Giants
last
are, I
year.
guess, in my mind. I mean, the thing is, Bobby Wagner's not looking at DVOA. When he looks at those teams, he thinks of the Giants and the Vikings as playoff teams where he could make the playoffs again next year.
Right.
We know differently. But
And if you are
I would
looking at it that
prefer
way,
the Giants, I guess.
if you're looking at it that way, then it's two schools of thought. The Giants have not lost nearly as much talent as the Vikings have, and the two teams met in the playoffs last year, and the Giants won. So in that light, the Giants look more ready to return, and that would be a better way back to the playoffs. But the other thing is that the Giants are in the same division as the Cowboys and Eagles, and even though the Eagles have lost a lot of talent, I don't think they've fallen back to the Giants level yet. Um, and the Vikings, as noted, the NFC North is a bit more of a cluster. So the path is clearer for the Vikings to get back in that way. So I don't know what's going to happen at this point. I mean, I'm looking down at some of these names, and there's a lot of confusion, a lot of unclear destinations. There's no obvious spots for him, and Wagner's kind of lost in the shuffle right now.
Yeah, the next guys I have are I put them together because they both play the same position: Marcus Peters and Rock Yassin. So it's like, which teams need cornerbacks at this point?
And that's almost all of them because you can never have too many corners.
Yeah,
Um,
that's true.
I know Marcus Peters has bounced around quite a bit, and has not always been the easiest guy to work with. Rocky Scene, as far as I know, is a consummate pro. Has also bounced from the Colts to the Raiders and that. Um, I'm going over like the playoff teams and
I wrote down the Colts, who right
yeah,
now have Dallas Flowers penciled in as a starting corner.
well, that's not very good. That's
The Vikings, but they don't have money.
they don't have any money. The
The
Lions and Browns,
Bears to replace Kendall Vildor.
they have the money.
They do
And
have
they
money.
They have the money and an obvious need. The Chiefs had those young defenders coming on strong late last year.
Yeah,
Um,
I think that these guys are gonna be stuck going to non-contenders.
yeah,
I think the contenders are most unless they wanna be depth pieces. If they wanna be starters, they have to go to non-contenders like the Colts or the Bears.
yeah. I mean, the Cardinals need quarterbacks, but do you want to play for Arizona this year?
Yeah,
Not in a perfect world, no.
right. Next in my best available free agents, the edge rushers, Yannick Ngakoue and Jadaveon Clowney. And then I didn't write them down, but also still available are Leonard Floyd and Frank Clark.
Yeah,
I still think the 49ers and Chiefs could use another veteran edge rusher. I love the idea of Yannick Ngakoue to the 49ers or Chiefs.
there's nothing wrong. You can't have too many quarterbacks. You can't have too many edge rushers either. But are the Atlanta Falcons awake? Do they know the edge rushers exist? Do they want to sack opposing quarterbacks? They have been dead last in adjusted sack rate each of the last 2 years, and in the 20s for like the better part of a decade now. And they haven't added a single edge rusher this offseason. Not one. And they had a lot of money to spend.
They
They're just
still do. They still do.
they still do. And there's all these guys out there to go get one of them. Just try. Just try to sack the quarterback.
Todd Singer sarcastically asks, do the Colts have enough money after shoring up their biggest weakness by signing Matt Gay? Well, I don't know about biggest weakness. Did I just mention that Dallas Flowers is penciled in as a starting cornerback? Left tackle, too. Right guard is a problem for them. They have a lot of problems. The Colts are 11th right now in effective cap space, according to Over the Cap. So they do have money to sign more players if they want.
Yeah. I, Atlanta's the team that my most head
Atlanta's the
scratching.
team that's bugging you.
It is. It's the most obvious weakness that has not been addressed that should have been addressed this entire offseason.
Yeah.
And there's other teams that have weaknesses, but they don't have the capital. They don't
The
have.
Bears also, by the way, the Bears also need edge rushers.
I'm sure they do. The Bears need everything. But the Falcons have the most obvious weakness, and in a division that is garbage, they give you an easy chance to try and win, and they're just twiddling their thumbs and watching grass grow and just hanging out. And these guys are still available, so there's still time between now and training camp to get one or two of them under contract. But again, just try. All they ask is to try.
DJ Chark. See, where I think Odell Beckham needs to go to a contender and wants to go to a contender, I think DJ Chark is on the level of, guess what? I'm going to any team that desperately needs a receiver.
Exactly.
I don't think he can choose. He can sit and pick and choose. So I wrote down the Vikings need an outside receiver now that they cut Adam Thielen.
Mm-hmm.
The Titans need an outside receiver. And the Packers could use more depth at receiver.
Packers have lost a lot. The Giants have a lot of receivers, but they're all slot receivers.
Yeah. Well, yeah, not Darius Slayton. Darius Slayton is an outside guy, but yeah, the Giants would be useful.
Yeah. And he's 27 now. He's going to be 27 this year. And he's had one big year for Jacksonville 4 years ago. But the Jaguars didn't want to keep him around. The Lions didn't want to keep him around.
But he was good. He was good in Detroit last year.
He's 500
He's just
yards.
replaced by Jameson Williams now.
In 11 games. So yeah, his per game production is still pretty good. But yeah, he's I kind of feel about him the way I feel about Mike Gesicki in New England. Like, he's a fine player, and if you add him, that's fine. But does he move the needle significantly for a lot of teams? I don't really think so.
No, we're down. When we talk about best available free agents, we're down to small amounts of needle movement.
Yeah, and they only make sense for teams that have glaring weaknesses at that spot. And we mentioned Kansas City. They're a team that lost a lot of receiver talent. I'd rather have Odell Beckham than DJ Chark, but it would make sense for DJ Chark to end up in Kansas City.
Dalton Risner, the guard from Denver, should go to the Colts. That's my opinion. They have Will Freeze listed as their starting right guard. He should go to the Colts. That's what he should do. The Buccaneers could use guards also, but like the Vikings, the Buccaneers have no money. None.
Yeah. No, those two make sense to me. I mean, we're like you say, we're the This is the C tier. If Lamar Jackson and Odell Beckham and Wagner are the B tier free agents, and in fact, even the guys like Yannick Ngakoue and Jadaveon Clowney are the C tier. This is the D tier. This is, man, we need some warm bodies. And
yeah, I guess the same goes with the guy I have last on our list, which is Taylor Rapp.
Taylor Rapp's actually been effective for LA. He's been hurt a lot.
It's interesting because I don't know if he's more of a free or strong safety. The Rams had him starting as listed him as strong safety last year, but a lot of the talk, there's been a lot of talk about him here in New England as a Devin McCourty replacement, which would be a free safety, not a strong safety.
Yeah. I think he's played a lot of both for LA. He has been hurt some. He missed the Super Bowl run. But he's rangy. He can cover a lot of ground. And he's a big hitter type. So yeah, I can see him. I can see him playing the free safety and replacing McCourty, and he'd be versatile, which Bill Belichick loves. So
Yeah.
That actually that's a really, really good fit. And he's a guy who, like I say, if he'd been healthier, I think he'd be higher on this list. But
I also wrote down the Ravens. If they want to run 3 safety sets like they did last year, he can replace Chuck Clark, right? With Kyle Hamilton and Marcus Williams as the starters.
That's a good fit too. I'm actually surprised that he's still available. Because I know the Rams would have loved to re-sign him, but
they don't have money. I wrote down the Buccaneers. They need a strong safety.
Yeah.
They have no money, but they have the least amount of cap room in the league.
Yeah. So we're at the point where teams are going to have to get creative, and maybe these guys just sit around and wait to see who gets cut. And this may drag on into training camp before some of these guys find a home. But of these last half dozen or so names here, Taylor Rapp seems like the guy who would maybe make the biggest difference for a team like New England. I know Cincinnati found one safety to replace Bell and Bates, but you can get another one.
Yeah.
So that would make sense. There's a lot of teams that could use a good player like Taylor Rapp.
Yeah. And then I have a list here just for people who want to know who still has room left to sign players. These are the teams with the most effective cap room according to Over the Cap. The Bears, the Packers, who are just sitting around waiting to figure out what the hell is going on with Aaron Rodgers and haven't signed anybody.
Mm-hmm.
The Falcons, the Cardinals, and the Texans. Then the Panthers, the Bengals.
Yeah.
That's a team people would want to play for. The Lions, the Cowboys. This one shocked me. Number 10, the Saints.
How things change.
How do they even have? I mean, they have all the restructures and whatever that they've done. They're actually now 10th in effective cap room if they want to go out and sign people for their 8 and 9 squad.
And that's after giving Derek Carr a ton of money too. So that their cap situation changed quickly. Now, all it cost them was most of their defensive front.
Yes.
So there's
no Shai Tuttle, no David Onyemata, no Marcus Davenport coming back next year.
Yeah. So we can expect them to slip on defense, which is another reason I'm so frustrated by Atlanta not striking while the iron is hot. Just sitting by and letting this opportunity.
So the moral of this live stream podcast is, hey, Atlanta, sign some people.
Do something.
We're trying to kick Atlanta in the butt here.
Basically, yes.
Get them to start signing people.
Yeah. But those are the teams that have the most cash to spend. And when you look at what the future holds for those teams, obviously the Bengals at this point look like they're going to be a playoff contender every year. The Cowboys, same boat there. So if you want to get to the postseason, those are your 2 best bets. And as far as bright futures, we're looking at the Bears to improve in the next, maybe not in 2023, but in 2024 and 2025.
No, we're looking for them to improve in 2023. They just may not improve to playoff level, but
fair. That's true.
If they don't improve in 2023, everybody's got to go.
That's a good point. Okay,
like, they've added so many players, and will with the draft. If Fields needs to take the step, if Fields doesn't take the step this year, guess what? Start over again.
Yeah, I should not have said improve. I should have said contend. I don't think the Bears are going to contend this year. I don't think they're. If they get to 500, that's a great season. But they're in the same boat like the Panthers and Texans are going to have good young quarterbacks, and if you're a wide receiver who wants to play with a good young quarterback, there's two destinations. I don't know what's appealing about the Cardinals right now except money.
Right.
I don't know
I agree.
why anyone would want to play there unless no one else wanted you. That's a mess, and that's going to take a while to sort that
Or you
out.
have a good relationship with the coach, like Kazir White went there,
Yes,
and he's got a good relationship with Jonathan Gannon. So
yeah.
All right, folks. I want to remind you all, Football Outsiders has been a leader in football analytics for 20 years. If you are not an FO Plus subscriber, you should be one now to get access to all of our stuff. We are busy planning new stuff on the back end, new features for FO Plus. For example, post-game win expectancy is now posted for all games going back to the year 2000.
Ooh, fun.
So you can look when teams were supposed to win or not. And the $4.99 a month that you spend on an annual membership for FO Plus is the cheapest that FO Plus is going to be this year. Don't forget, you get access to Mike Tannier's full deep dive on NFL draft prospects in the FO 100. You get the Kubiak fantasy projections for next year. You get the Almanac 2023 Almanac and access to all previous editions as well. So lock in the best price of the year for FO Plus now by going to footballoutsiders.com/subscribe. All right, that does it for today's live stream and podcast. We're taking next week off. Next week, both I and Mike Tannier are going to be on vacation. So there will be no live stream next Thursday. And then we will be back on April 6th, I think, is the Thursday after that.
April 6th is a Thursday, yes.
Yes, with Ben Robinson on talking about draft, mocking the draft, and we'll talk a little bit about where guys are going to go in the draft and get you all ready for the draft at the end of April. So, Vince, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me on. Had a great time.
And thank you all for listening and watching. And again, we will be back on Thursday in 2 weeks, 1 p.m. Eastern. Until then, thank you for listening and watching and reading Football Outsiders, and take care, everybody. And
Adios.
Falcons, go sign people.